Ever get that feeling? Like you're listening to your friends talk about their trips. Oh, we just got back from Babylon. And you're sitting there thinking, Babylon? How could I ever afford that?
Yeah.
Well, today's deep dive might just have the answer for you.
What's so interesting about Babylon is that it wasn't like they had all this natural wealth, you know? It's that they understood how to build wealth, and that's something that really anyone can learn.
That is exactly what our guidebook is for today, The Richest Man in Babylon. It's full of these stories about how everyday people, we're talking chariot builders and camel traders, went from, well, that to being able to afford those extravagant vacations.
I think it's amazing how, even though these stories are set centuries ago, they still resonate with us today
Yeah.
because the principles, they're timeless.
Absolutely. Take, for example, Bansir and Kobe, these hard workers who are just barely making ends meet. And the irony is they live in the wealthiest city in the world.
That's the beauty of Clayson's storytelling, right? He uses that contradiction, that why them and not me,
Yeah.
to make you ask that question, like, what's the secret ingredient that they're missing?
Yeah. He's tapping into that human desire, that universal desire for financial security.
Right.
It's like, I work hard, I deserve a piece of that Babylonian pie.
And here's the thing. Babylon wasn't built on some magical gold mine, right? It was built by people who figured out the code to wealth creation, and those secrets, those principles, are what Klassen lays out in his book.
Okay, so let's unlock this treasure chest of Babylonian wisdom, shall we? Klesson calls them the 7 cures for a lean purse, and they're all about building wealth through, what I love, simple and practical habits.
And what's important here is that these are not, get-rich-quick schemes. This is about shifting your mindset and building habits for lasting wealth.
It's like that saying, pay yourself first.
Yeah.
But Klassen actually shows us how that worked in ancient Babylon. For example, the egg merchant, he understood that even a tiny amount saved consistently.
Exactly, like he was building a pyramid brick by brick.
Mm.
He'd put one more egg in his basket than he took out to sell.
So it's that snowball effect.
Yes.
Small, consistent actions, they lead to huge growth over time.
Exactly. And that's the foundation of start thy purse to fattening.
Yeah.
Which is the first cure. It's all about creating a habit to set aside some of your earnings before you even think about spending it.
I can already hear my takeout budget crying a little bit.
Right.
Speaking of spending, how does this pay yourself first idea actually work in ancient Babylon?
Well, let's take Arkad, for example. He's the richest man in Babylon and a big believer in this principle. He says, and this is important, no matter how much or how little you earn, always save at least a tenth of it.
It's like planting a cedar tree. You start with a tiny seed, that initial saving, and then over time, consistent nurturing, it just grows into something big and strong.
Yeah. But he doesn't just stop at saving. He also stresses the importance of making your money work for you, finding ways for it to multiply.
Okay, so no burying our goal in the backyard. I got it. Right.
But there's always a catch, right? And Clayson, he kind of throws this curveball our way, procrastination. He tells that story of the merchant who's all gung-ho about investing, but then he gets distracted by some fancy new robes.
It's such a human experience, that temptation, right? Spend now, invest later.
Oh, tell me about it. I can't tell you how many times I've been like, add to cart, and poof, there goes my investment budget. But Clayson, he offers us a solution, doesn't he? He tells us we have to seize these opportunities, like the camel trader who completely misses out because he was, too slow to make a move.
And that is the importance of planning.
Mm.
If we think about Dobasir,
Yeah.
he starts off as a slave, but through careful budgeting and planning, he turns his life completely around, becomes the successful camel trader. I think his story really resonated with me because he makes these impulsive choices, ends up in debt. I mean, haven't we all been there at some point? But what I found really powerful is this idea that he tracks his spending. It's something we can all do right now, to kind of take control.
Absolutely. And Davison shows us that no matter where you're starting, with that discipline, a good plan, you can achieve that financial freedom. He was so diligent. He tracked all of his earnings. He would put a portion towards his savings, living expenses, and what's crucial, paying off his debt. He would literally inscribe his debts on a clay tablet, and as he would pay them off, he would chip away at them.
I love that image. That's next level motivation right there. So we've got the pay yourself first down. We're going to tackle that procrastination. We're convinced about planning. But then Klassen, he's like, hold my beer. And he introduces the 5 laws of gold.
The 5 laws are really the pillars of wealth building.
Okay.
And these are principles that are just as relevant now as they were back then.
Right.
And they cover everything from seeking good counsel to guarding your investments from loss.
These laws, they sound like the real deal. So break them down for us. What are they?
All right, so the first law stresses consistent saving.
Sounds familiar.
It echoes pay yourself first. The second law encourages putting that money to work.
Okay.
Find those profitable investments.
So we're not talking about hiding it under a mattress. It's got to grow.
Right, exactly. And it's not just about any investment. This is where the third law comes in, seeking advice from experts.
Ah, okay. So not just chasing the latest trend. Like, you really got to do your research. Find those people you trust.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's like building a house. You wouldn't just start laying bricks without talking to an architect, would you?
Right.
These experts are your financial architects. They're going to help you build that solid financial foundation. Now, the fourth law, that cautions against investing in things that you don't understand.
Okay.
Remember those get-rich-quick schemes?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of those violate this law.
Which leads us perfectly to number 5.
You got it. The fifth law warns against falling for those traps. Don't let emotions cloud your judgment.
Yeah.
Be cautious, do your research, and don't let greed lead you astray.
So basically, Klessen's saying, hey, if those guys with their clay tablets and camel caravans could build wealth, I mean, we can figure out this whole stock market thing, right?
Exactly. The tools might have changed, but those core principles, they're universal. Like, let's say you're thinking about, I don't know, investing in some real estate.
Okay.
Clausen's third law.
Yeah.
About seeking advice. That's where it's at. Would you ever, build a house without talking to an architect?
Right.
No way. So find your financial architect.
It's like having a blueprint, right? You don't just jump into something as complex as real estate without it.
Exactly. And that's just one example. These laws, they work for starting a business, managing what you've already invested, really any money decision you're making.
Yeah, it really shows that financial success, it's not about some lucky streak. It's about being smart, having a plan, and what Klassen says a lot, being patient.
Couldn't agree more. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And speaking of journeys, we got to talk about Davasir. The guy who went from slave to hotshot camel trader.
Yeah.
What a story, right?
Yeah.
Really drives home the point that it doesn't matter where you're starting. It's never too late to turn things around.
His whole thing with paying off his debts, even when it felt impossible, that was inspiring. Just goes to show, with some grit and commitment, you can overcome anything.
Every time I hear his story, I think, man, if Davasir could chip away at his debts on a clay tablet and build this whole empire, what are we capable of with the stuff we have today?
That's a good question, and I think that's what makes The Richest Man in Babylon so special. It's more than just a finance book. It's like a guidebook for life.
Mm-hmm.
So, as we wrap things up here, if you could give our listeners one thing to really chew on, what would it be?
Don't overthink it. The journey to, feeling financially secure, it all starts with that first step. We all have the power, just like those Babylonians did. It's all about taking those principles, taking action, and enjoying the ride.
Beautifully put. So to everyone listening, grab yourself a copy of The Richest Man in Babylon, get inspired, and who knows, maybe you'll be a richest person in your own modern-day Babylon. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep learning and keep growing.